My Gavanan Melonin, and well met indeed. I'm Arachir Galadirthan, head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and welcome to another modding tutorial. Today we're going to be adding a unit. This video will be split into two parts. First of all, we will be adding a unit that already exists within the files you are editing, and you're just changing that unit from one faction to another, or adding it to another faction. And the second part will be adding a new unit from another mod into the mod you want. All of the files we'll be working on today are Divide and Conquer centric, but of course you can do this exact process on any mod that uses Medieval 2 and indeed Rome Total War 1 as well. So the first thing you're going to want to do, as I say, the first part of this video is adding a unit that is already in your mod to another faction. There are 4 aspects, or 5 really, of adding a unit. First of all, you've got to deal with the ownership, and these will be timestamped in the description. You've got to deal with ownership, then you've got to deal with the model, then you've got to do the UI, and finally you've got to set up the training, otherwise it won't be available in campaign. There's a 5th element, which is the text, which you need to do if you're bringing a unit from another mod. So first of all, let us go straight in with ownership, and for this you're going to need the export descript unit, which, if we open our file, you need to go to the data folder of the mod that you want to edit, and the export descript unit is near the bottom there. They're always in alphabetical order. Today I'm going to be adding the Wind Riders of Khand to the Northern Dunedain, because why not? So this is the entry. This is the unit that I want. First of all, you need to find the unit that you want within your mod, and one of the easiest ways of doing that is coming back to your folder, opening the text file, opening the export_units file, which looks like this, and then that will allow you to search for the unit's in-game name. So if you know what the unit is called, Wind Riders of Khand, which is the unit we're using, it then gives you their dictionary name, which is Wind Riders of Khand. So you can copy that, go back to your export descript unit, which we will call the edu, search for what you've just found, and it will bring you to your entry. Da-da-dum. Adding a unit to another faction is very, very straightforward. The unit entry, there's only ever one per unit. It's not one per faction. All we need to do to add this unit to the other faction is give them ownership. So, the Northern Dunedain are the Turks faction, and it will be on you in the mod that you are in to find out what the faction's name is. For many mods, they will be European names, or they will be the Medieval 2 names, sorry, and then you'll have to find out what that faction's name, what the faction you want to edit's actual file name is. But the Northern Dunedain are the Turks. So we add Turks to the ownership line. Now that will allow me to train that unit in custom battle. But if I want it in the campaign as well, I must also add it to one of the 3 eras. Now in Divide and Conquer, the 3 eras don't actually have any impact. So you must add it to all of them, because essentially all 3 eras are running at the same time. So it must be present on them all. So there we are. The Northern Dunedain can now train this unit. Now that's given it the ownership. Next, we need to give the model ownership to the Turks, or you will get the famed Silver Surfer, which hopefully I showed you on the screen just then. So next we need to edit the model. Now this is this line just here, the armor upgrade model. That is the unit, but I've chosen the Wind Riders specifically because they also ride a horse, and so we can double check that the horse has ownership as well, otherwise you'll get silver horses and non-silver units, or vice versa. So, the armor upgrade model is Khand Wind Riders, so double click that and copy it, and now you want to go back to the folder, go to the data folder as you were already in, and go into the unit models folder, and then open the BMDB, the Battle Models Database. Within this, search for the unit that you just looked for, and they will all be listed. Now, sometimes you may want to match the whole word only, because sometimes you will get situations where there's an upgraded version, and that may or may not apply to what we're looking for. So always do match whole case only, and it will ensure that you find just the entry on its own. A little side note here is I can't show it with the Wind Riders, but there must be a unit around somewhere that's got a difference. Well, these ones show you anyway. The armor upgrade models can have 4 entries total, and there may be differences, and you need to give ownership to any entry that is present. An example of this is if we go to the Lumbermen. The Lumbermen have Lumbermen and then Lumbermen upgrade, so you need to give ownership to both. But returning to the Battle Models database, we can see that there are 6 factions that have ownership of this unit. The Turks, Khand, England, Venice, Spain, Slave. Those are the 6. Now you will note this is a poor example because Turks already have ownership. So let's pretend I was adding them to Byzantium instead. There are 6 entries here. We want to make 7. So that 6 there needs to be changed to a 7. And then we need to type the word Byzantium. And double click on that. If you're using Notepad++, down here in the bottom right, it will tell you how many letters long it is. So we know that that is 9 letters or characters. So we add 9 Byzantium, and then very simply just highlight everything after the next faction entry up to then the following faction entry. Copy that, Control-C, and paste it after Byzantium. Then there's always 2 sections of every entry. The first section deals with the textures, and the second section deals with the attachments. So we must also change that as well. And again, we add 9 Byzantium. Now, remember, Byzantium in this case isn't actually what we need, because I foolishly didn't check if the Turks already had ownership. So we actually only wanted Turks to own this. But that is how I would change it if I wanted, say, Byzantium to own the unit. You must always add 1 on the increment there, and the number of characters must be written before the entry. And then you just simply copy it. So we can go back to the edu, and if we go back to the Wind Riders, we note there's only 1 entry, so we only needed the 1 entry. But as I mentioned, there's the horse. Now again, this horse will have ownership, but you should always check first of all. So to find the horse, highlight the horse that you've got in question. Go to your data folder again and look for the Descript Mount file, which is that one just there. And in here, search for your merchant horse, and it will give you your type. And then quite plainly, it writes underneath the model, Mount Merchant Horse. Copy that, go back to the Battle Models database, look for the Mount Merchant Horse. And as I say, most of these horses, they all have ownership anyway, but just double check that the faction you want is listed. And this, for the horses, there is only 1 entry. So you'll note the Mount Merchant Horse begins there, and it ends there at the Mount Canned Horse. And the Turks already have ownership, so we don't have to worry. But if we wanted another faction to have ownership, again, you must increment that by 1 so that it goes up. Let's say we were adding, I don't know, Timurids. I don't think Timurids are listed. I typed Timurids. That's 8 letters long, or 8 characters. So it must have an 8 and a space. Okay, so that's the model section completed. We've given it so that the unit won't be a Silver Surfer. Then we come to the UI. So now this is all done entirely in the folders. So go to the data folder again. Go to the UI folder, as you might imagine. And there are 2 that we're going to need, unit info and units. So go to unit info and go to the faction who already owned the unit. So if in our case it's Canned, and we're looking for the Wind Riders of Canned, that entry there, which is the same as the dictionary entry. So we take that, you simply copy it, go back to the unit info, look for the faction we're adding it to, and this is in this case Turks, and add it to the Turks. And there it goes at the bottom. And then you must do exactly the same under the Units tab as well. Back in Data, UI, Units, look for Canned, Wind Riders of Canned. Note these ones, for some reason, have a hash in front, whereas the other ones don't. I don't know why. It feels like the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing when they made this game. Find the Turks and then paste again the Wind Riders in there. That is the UI done. So the final thing is to make that unit trainable in the campaign. So we've given ownership, we've given a model over, we've given UI over. Now we just want the unit to be trained. Now for this, we just need the type line of the edu. Wind Riders of Canned. Go into your data folder, again, scroll right to the bottom and find Export Descript Buildings and open that. And it will look like this. We've started on the troll cage. What you need to do is then choose how you want the unit to train. Do you want it to come from a stables? Do you want it to come from a town hall? Do you want it to come from the city itself? What building do you want it to come from? Now in our case, because it is a cavalry unit, we're going to want it to come from the stables. So in here, the best way to find them, well, certainly in Divide and Conquer's files, we list all of the buildings at the top. So I can double click on stables, and then I can search through the file and it will bring me to stables. Now, we want to add the unit to a building that faction actually gets. So do note in this instance, because we're adding Wind Riders of Canned to Turks, and the Turks don't use the standard stables, they have their own, we've got to find the building that we want to use. So in this case, it's under the unique recruitment building. But the fastest way to find the building that you want is again using the text file. So go back to the data folder, go to the text folder and open the export_buildings, which looks like this. And search for the building that you know from the game. So I know, for example, that the Dunedain Barracks is called the Dunedain War Camp. That's the building I want this unit to be trained in. I take that entry at the top left, which is always above the do not translate, and copy that and come back to the EDB and paste it in there, and boom, it jumps me to the Dunedain war camp. And this one is the actual entry of the war camp. You'll note that this is a building that the Turks can build, so this is perfect. This is where we want. And the absolute easiest way to set this up is copy an existing entry. And we'll go through. You'll note there's already some Candish units at the bottom here, which is handy, and so in that instance we'll take these units. But we want to make a new entry, and then we're just going to set it up to be what we want. Go back to the edu and copy the type line, then come back to the EDB and paste it between the two brackets. Not brackets, quotation marks. There must always be quotation marks. The next number is how many units are available once the building builds, and we want 1 unit to be available straight away as soon as you build the war camp. Next up is their replenishment. Divide 1 by that number. So at the moment we've got 1 divided by 0.06, which is a 16.6 recruitment turn time. Replenishment turn time rather. But we want this unit to be relatively available, so we're going to go for 0.1. 1 divided by 0.1, as you will all know, is 10. So we get 10 turn replenishment. Then the 2 is how many units will be available if we never train the unit. So there will only ever be 2 units available. So it takes 10 turns to replenish. Let's say I wait 50 turns before I build it. There will still only ever be 2 units. And lastly, do we want it to come with any experience? I'd recommend leaving that as no, because it's quite buggy. This requires the Turks. We want this unit to be trained by the Turks, so that goes in there. And then lastly, we come to the hidden resources, and this is the bit that takes a little bit more finagling. This allows you to restrict the unit to certain regions only. And this can be a bit fiddly if you don't have certain tools, but I'll do it without the tools because many of you won't. So what you will need to do for this, you want to find out the region that you want it available in. So again, go to the text folder and go to Imperial Campaigns, Regions and Settlements, which lists every single region and settlement. And find the one that you want. We want this unit to be available only in Sturlutza, which is the capital of Khand, which I've spelt wrong, so we'll only spell half of it because I don't know the end. There we are. Sturlutza is available in the Harad province. So take Harad province and copy that. And then go back to the data folder, go to data, go to world, maps, base, and open the descript regions file, which lists all the regions, and paste in here Harad province. Now, again, as you can see, it's found Harad in a different entry, so make sure it's match whole word only. And there we are, there's the Harad province. This province is every province has 2 identifiers, or indeed in other mods there may be different alternative identifiers, but for divide and conquer every faction, every region has 2 identifiers. One which is a geographical region, and then one res A through K, I think. You can find all of the hidden resources for any one mod at the top of the EDB. So if we just pop a bookmark there, you can pop bookmarks in Notepad++ by clicking on the left. Scroll right to the top. It is quite literally the first actual entry, hidden resources, there they all are. So you'll note that for divide and conquer, and every mod will be different, we have all the geographical regions that you can use, and then there's res A through M, and then there are various other identifiers as well. Now you can create your own if you want, and you use the descript region to distribute it. But for now, I won't go into that. That'll maybe for a later video. But for our purposes, we want it available in Sturlutza, so we need Mordor and we need Res L. So we go back to the EDB, press F2, which jumps you to your bookmark, and then we want to set that up. So at the minute, we've got an hidden resource Mordor, which is what we needed. There's Mordor and there's Res L. In fact, let's just move that to the other view so you can see better. And then you've got to jump all the way back through to the EDB. So we've got Mordor and we've got Res M, and we need Mordor and Res L. So we just simply change that to L. And that is exactly how the hidden resources work. It's and one hidden resource and another hidden resource. Now you can do ores as well. So if I wanted it available in Sturlutza and also in the Khand province, which if we go back through our... let's move that to the other view so it's a bit easier. Let's say I wanted it in Sturlutza and the Khand province, which is, say it with me now, Khand, or Amu Khand is the name of the settlement, and Khand is the name of the province. So we've got it in the Khandish capital, which is Sturlutza, and the region's called Springs of Khand. And we've got it in Amu Khand, which province name is Khand. Lots of Khands going on here. But that province has Mordor and Res M, so we need both. So what you you can either have two entries. So I could copy that entry, paste it again, and change the second one to M, and then that one, the top one, is only ever used when we're in the region that has both Mordor and L, and that one's only used when we're in Mordor and M. But what you can also do is use the OR function. So I could have and hidden resource Mordor and hidden resource res L, or hidden resource res M. And that also works, which cuts down on the lines in the EDB and is preferred. Do note, though, that the OR function splits everything before and after it. So if I had put and hidden resource Mordor or hidden resource L and hidden resource M, it would look for the hidden resource Mordor and make it available there, or it would look for a region that has both L and M and make it available there. Now, that may not make too much sense at the moment, but if you get deeper in, it's just something to bear in mind, that the OR should always be at the end of the line, because it splits everything before it from everything after it. It isn't a sort of standalone trait. I.e., once you've reached your OR, that's a stop, that's a break, and then everything that follows is then grouped together under its own section. But anyway, that has then added it to the Dunedain War Camp for training, and that unit can now be trained on the campaign map. Now, of course, the Dunedain War Camp upgrades, and we want it to be available once we've upgraded, so we go to the second tier, which is Dunedain Barracks, and we paste it at the bottom there as well, and then it's available in the barracks. And there's a third tier, so we scroll down again, and we paste it in a third tier as well. And then it is available in all those versions. Do note, of course, Medieval 2 has castles and towns, and the Dunedain Barracks is one such building that has a castle and a town variant. So we must also come to the castle variant and paste it in here, otherwise it wouldn't be available in castles. Which doesn't actually matter in this case, because the hidden resource Mordor, Res L or Res M, they are both towns. So the castle entry isn't strictly required, but it's very, very good to get into the good habit of copying it into both anyway. Because in the future, that region may become a castle, and then suddenly you've got to go and find out why a unit's not training. And it's always better to cover the bases, so always paste it in both the town and castle version, even if you know it won't actually be trained from a castle anyway. That is always, always advisable. So for adding a unit within a mod, that is all you have to do. Everything else is done and dusted and handled for you, no trouble. We've given the unit ownership so that it can actually be trained. We've given the unit's model ownership so that it won't be a Silver Surfer. We have given the unit a UI so that you won't have the peasant militia icon from Rome when it's present in the game. And lastly, we've set it up in the EDB so that you can train it, so that you'll actually get the unit in the campaign. Now we will swap and do what happens if I want to add a unit from another mod, which is asked an awful lot. Well, the process is very, very similar, with only a couple of minor differences. So first of all, we'll go to the EDU of the mod you are adding to. So in this case, we're adding to Divide and Conquer, and as has been requested so many times, we're going to add a unit from Third Age Reforged. So Third Age Reforged has its own entry there under the Medieval 2 mod. So we go into that, go into the data, and we want to open the EDU of this mod as well. So we're in the EDU of this mod, and what we're going to do is just add the first unit, because I know that we don't have it. They're called Numenorian Lords, and they're a Numenorian unit. So first things first, copy that entire entry and paste it to the faction that you want to train it here. Now every faction is handily broken down, but that doesn't, not every mod does that. Most of them should, because it makes sense, but some of them don't. So we want to add Numenorian Lords, and let's use the Northern Dunedain again, because we're sticking with them. So we've got Northern Dunedain, so we can just find them and paste it in there. Now, it doesn't have to be. They don't have to be grouped together at all, but it makes sense to group them together, because then it's easier if you're modding in the future. So we simply add us some space and paste it in there. For uniformity, I like only one break between them. So the Numenorian Lord is now added. So first things first again, let's give ownership to it. So at the moment for them, it's Teutonic Order, but we don't want it to be Teutonic Order. We want it to be Turks. So the easiest way to do this is just copy an entry from the faction you're adding it to and just replace those three lines. Done and dusted. You always want to give ownership to the slave nation, because otherwise, if this nation goes rebel, well, you don't have to, but if this nation goes rebel and this unit doesn't have a slave entry, then it will never be present in the rebel version of this faction. So if the faction is killed by regicide, for example, and many of their regions convert to the rebel faction, any units that aren't owned by the slaves will simply be destroyed. So it's worthwhile always ensuring that slave is present there, and we will be continuing in this tutorial as if slave exists. So we've given ownership to the unit, the Turks can now train it. We then come to the model, and this is where it gets a bit trickier. So go back to the data folder of where you're taking the unit from, go into the unit models folder, and you want to open the battle models database. I mean, Jesus, they've got millions, but open just the battle models database. Ignore the old one, it's just the new one we want. Come to the unit that we are using, and it's called a Numenorian Lord. So we copy that, and we go to the battle models database, and we find our Numenorian Lord, and there he is. Now again, we want to just add this entry wholesale to our own battle models database. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to be adding a new entry. So go to your battle models database. So first of all, copy everything from the line just above the unit's name, which will be a string of numbers. It'll either look like that, or as we saw with the horse, sometimes it'll look like that, but it is always listed directly above the unit name that you're taking. So we want the 16 Numenorian Lords, so we copy that whole entry down to and including the next string of identifying numbers before the next entry, and copy all of that. Then come back to our battle models database and scroll to the very, very top where it lists here 1191. We are adding a new entry, so we must increase that by 1, so it becomes 1192. And then we can paste it wherever we like. So we're going to stick it in here after the barded horse because we want it to be near the top. So we've got our Numenorian Lord, we've got that set up. Now you'll note that the Turks don't have ownership, so first things first, we need to add the Turks as owners. Is Turks 5 letters? Yes, it is. That's handy because I guessed that. And we can copy that, copy all of that, sorry, and replace it over that too as well. Because remember, you've got to do the unit's textures and then you've got to do the unit's attachments. So once we've got the entries set, we can copy that and paste it after the Turks. And then again down here, copy that and paste it after the Turks. And then we've got the Turks set up. They now own the unit. But, of course, this is where the difference comes in. None of these textures exist in the mod we are adding the unit to. So we've got to now actually go and find them and set them up in our mod. Now, the easiest way to do this, because this file is really temperamental, very easy to break, and I've known so many people hate this file with a burning passion. So it's easiest to follow the same pattern they have used. Rather than moving the texture to one of your own folders, you should create a folder that matches. So if we move that over to the left-hand side and bring up the unit models, go back to the mod you are in and make sure you've got these folders set up. There will be 3 folders normally that you need. The first is this unit model folder at the top. The second is the texture folder. And the third is the attachments folder. So we're going back to the mod that we are adding it to, in this case Divide and Conquer, and you'll note we need unit models, units, Numenor. So we go to unit models, we go to _units, and we search for N, and you'll note we don't have a Numenor, because why would you have a Numenor? So we need to add Numenor. So there's Numenor added in, it's spelled exactly in the same format as we see there, and we can create that. You'll note that we then need, under this tier, we'll just do the folders for the moment. Under this tier, we need unit models, units, Numenor, and textures. So we go into Numenor, and we add a textures folder. And there, that gets set up. And lastly, we need a unit models attachment set. Now that one is uniform, and almost every mod in existence uses that folder. So you should always have it. So there we are, data, unit models, attachment sets. It doesn't matter if it's capital or not, it makes no odds. It's not case sensitive, so don't worry about that. So you'll note there's an attachment set, and then you'll also note that it's got hundreds and hundreds of files in it, 793 items. So we've got our folders set up. So now what we need to do is find the files in question. So we go back to the mod, in this case Third Age Reforged, data, and we follow the same path and we just copy the units stuff out that we need. So the first entry, units there, and then we want Numenor. And then we want Numenorian Lords lod0.mesh. Now, if you don't have file extensions turned on, I recommend you Google how to turn them on and turn them on, because otherwise you may get problems later on down the line. But no, we're looking for Numenorian Lords lod0mesh, and there it is, Numenorian Lords lod0.mesh. So we copy that, and we come back to the folder that we were in, and we paste it in. So unit models, units, and Numenor, and it just goes in that first entry. Job done. Let's open a second folder so that we're not jumping around like this, because it gets really annoying, doesn't it? There we are. Dun dun dun. Just chuck that one in there, and move that in there. So there we are. So this one over here is going to be our divide and conquer folder, and this one over here we're going to make as our reforged folder. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but it's why would you not use it? It's very handy. So we're entirely in the unit models folder. So the next entry, we want unit models, units, Numenor, textures, units, and we want Numenor, and we want textures, and they're going to be going into the units, Numenor, textures on this side. And this time we need Elder Londe, which is handily at the top, and we just paste that over there. But then do note, there's also another folder here, which is, I've led you astray, sorry. There is a second folder, which is almost unheard of, but they've used, I assume they're utilizing an already existing texture. So go back to your units, because you note we need units, and then N, L mail, H mail, which I happen to know isn't a file, is a folder that exists in almost every mod. For Third Age Total War at least. And we're looking for the textures, so we go to textures, and then we're looking for bard underscore normal, which will be near the top because they're always alphabetical. Bard underscore normal, there it is. And our folder almost certainly will have that if you're dividing, conquering. Oh no, it doesn't. So just add that in there, and we add that into our side. So that's the textures taken care of. And then we'll move on to the attachment sets. I'll do the sprites last. We'll move on to the attachment sets. And again, this is a folder, as already mentioned, that exists for most mods. Go to the attachment sets, This is the one we're adding to. This is the one we're taking from. And we want Elderlonde underscore attach. And it is not there. Oh, hang on, it's because I went into the wrong folder, isn't it? They've got an attachment sets and an attachment sets. Right, there we are. Sorry. So check the one you're going into. That was a perfect example of checking where you're going, because they've bizarrely created a second folder. And we want Elderlonde attach texture. There it is. So we copy that and we paste it into there. And then we want Remena underscore attach underscore norm as well. So search for R and Remena underscore attach underscore norm. Yep. Copy that one and paste it over there. And it's the same for the next two and the same for the next two. So that's all that. So then lastly, there's just the sprite. Now the sprite doesn't technically matter. If the sprite is missing, the game won't crash. It just simply won't generate it. But it's a very easy copy. So we are looking for, we're in the unit sprites folder, as you just saw me go into, and it's Teutonic Order Numenorian Lords sprite. So go to T, and they're all listed here, and again, they're alphabetical. So we've got Numenorian Lords sprite, and you want everything that bears the name. There will be a sprite file, which is called .spr, and then there will be up to, normally, there'll be a 000 and a 001, but there may be a 002, 3, or 4. But it is those, in this case, there's only a 001, so we want those three files there, the two textures and the sprite, and we copy those, and we paste them into our own sprite file folder. And then that is it for adding the model. So now the Battle Models database, our one, now has the unit that we wanted, and we've copied all the textures and sprites, which means it won't crash when we play the game. But do remember, you must you must increment that number at the top by 1, or the file will crash. So we've added the model. Now we need to add the UI as we did before. So if we put that back over to the left-hand side, now we're looking for the UI. So again, go to the folder that the unit is in, that the unit came from. In this case, it's Reforged, UI, and we'll start with unit info. And then go to the unit folder for the faction we're adding it to. So in our case, we're going to unit info and then Turks, because we're adding it to the Turks. Now, go back to the EDB from the Reforged file, and this belongs to the Teutonic Order, and it is called Numenorian underscore Lords. So we go to their UI folder, and within here, there should be, but there isn't because they've not actually set it up. So this unit was a terrible example. They don't have a UI, so you would have to create your own. Damn. Oh dear. Let us scroll past Teutonic Order then, and there we are, Sicily. Let's pretend we're adding the Gondor cavalry. So if they'd actually had set it up, so at the moment there isn't a UI for the Numenorian Lord, so you would have to create your own. which isn't for this video. But if it were the Gondor Cavalry we were adding, it's a simple case of just finding the folder and finding the unit. That's all you need to do. Do they have a units version? Oh, yes, I think they do. So if we go back and go to the units instead, and again, go to Turks. So this is the folder we're adding to. This is the folder we're taking from. And again, at the top of the file, the Númenórean Lord is what we're after. And he's called Númenórean_Lord. We're in the Teutonic Order folder because that's who owns it. And here, there should be a Númenórean Lords. Yes, there is. So we copy him over there, and he's now added. So that adds the UI. Maybe in future I'll... Well, the fact that there's a missing UI is just you'd have to go and pester the mod that you're taking the unit from and ask them to create one, or simply follow a tutorial online about how to create them. Next, we come then to text. This was not required under the adding a unit within a mod, but it is required if you're adding between mods. So what you want to do now is go to the data folder of the mod you're taking from and go to the data folder of the mod you're adding. Go into text and open the export_units of the mod you're taking from. And then go back to your edu from the mod you're taking from and copy Númenórean Lords, go back to the EU and paste that in there, and we find Númenórean Lords. They're called Pharazim Nobles in the game, which is a bizarre name, if I may just say so. And we want to copy that entry. Now, generally speaking, you don't have to actually split the entries like this, but every mod I've ever seen does, and it makes sense again because it keeps them nice and orderly. So copy that entry there and go back to the export units of the mod you're adding to and paste it wherever you like. They don't have to be kept together, but it's worthwhile keeping them together. And make sure that they're separated out. So there we are, Númenórean Lords are added. Now, the text entry for units is 1 per unit. It doesn't matter how many nations own that unit, they all must have the same description. So there is only 1 description that you can use. So we paste that in there, and then you can save that file, and that's it. That's the text of the unit done. You can then edit this file as much as you want, change the name of the unit, change its description, do what you like. And lastly, of course, training. Now, you don't need the old mod for training at all. So you can close that folder down now, and you can split your screen again between just the 2 you need. So go to the export to script buildings of your mod, the one you're adding to. And again, we've added to the Turks, haven't we? So let's go back up to the war camp, the starting Turkish building, or Northern Dunedain in this case. And we're going to add it into here. So again, this is called a Númenórean Lord. So let's say we want this unit in a Númenas only. So we'll copy the Windrider of Khand entry and we'll paste that in there. We go to our new EDU where we've got our new unit set up, and we copy the type name of Númenórean Lords and we paste that into there as well. Now we'll keep the rest the same, so it's 1, it takes 10 turns to train, there are 2 available, but then we come to what we need to change, because this does not, of course, relate to a Númenas. So we want to find a Númenas in our mod. So let's open this out fully. Go back to your mod, and go to the text folder again, Imperial Campaigns, Regions and Settlements, and find a Númenas, or wherever you want it to train. In this case, we're going for a Númenas. A Númenas is the town name, so that's the town name line, and the one above the town is always the region. It's called Lake Evandene Province. So we go to Lake Evandene Province, and then again, we go back to our mod, Data, World, Maps, Base, Descript Regions, and we find Lake Evandene Province, which is broken down by Arthedain and Res E. So that'll allow us to train in just there. So we come back to our Númenórean Lords, we change Mordor to Arthedain. Now this bit is case sensitive. The hidden resources must match exactly as they do at the list at the top. And then what did we say it was? It was Res E. So then we add Res E. And then once again, to make sure that that unit is trainable regardless of the barracks tier, we add it to each entry. And again, make sure you add it throughout the castle as well, otherwise you'll get into bad habits. Now the final thing to do is related to the horse itself. That's why I chose Númenórean Lords, although it was quite poorly chosen in the end, because you'll note this is a cavalry unit and it has a horse. So, in order to add the horse, we go through a very similar process as we did before. Now, the Nazgul horse is something that is already in Divide and Conquer. And in fact, I expect all of the mounts of Reforged are ones that I already have. So you probably won't need to worry if you're copying from Reforged. But we'll go through the process of what we would need to do anyway. So go to the mod folder where we are taking from. So we go to Reforged, go to Data, and open their Descript mount. Go back to their edu, and let's copy Nazgul horse. And copy that, go over to the mount, find the horse, and then copy the entry of the horse. They're always split by a line between the two, everything from the type to the type. Go to then our descript mount, which we already have open, and paste it wherever you like, as long as there's a gap and a gap. Now you'll notice I say we've already got a Nazgul horse, but ignore that for the moment. Then go select the Mount Nazgul horse, go to the BMDB of the mod you're taking from, find the horse, there she rides, and copy everything from the numbers above to the numbers of the next entry. And then go back to your battle models database. Again, go to the very top and increase that number by 1 because we're adding a new horse. Paste it in where we want it to go, and make sure that Turks have ownership, or make sure the faction you're adding has ownership. In this case, they don't, so we need to add Turks again. And then we copy everything after that and we paste it in there. Now remember, horses only have 1 entry, so you only have to do that the once. But then we need to do the folder thing that we did before. So unit models, mounts, and Nazgul horse is what we need. And you'll note there's Nazgul horse there, and those are all the folders that we need. So it's only 1 folder this time. So we go back to our mod, we go to the data, we go to unit models, we go to mounts, and then it needs a Nazgul horse, which we handily, unfortunately, do already have. Or not necessarily not handily, but we do already have Nazgul horse. And then it requires the Mount Nazgul horse LOD mesh and a textures folder. Now we've already got a textures folder set up quite handily, and then we would go back to the mod that we're taking from, go to their equivalent of the same folder, Nazgul horse, and we want, what is it called? Mount Nazgul horse LOD mesh, Mount Nazgul horse LOD mesh, and we'd copy that, and we go back to our mod and we paste it in, and then you do the same for the textures. So it would go in mounts, and then it would go Nazgul horse, and it would go in there. But no, as I say, DAC already has it, so I'm not going to paste it in, but Mount Nazgul horse LOD mesh. And you must do the same for that one, and then the 2 textures, and then finally the sprite, as we did before. Then save all of those files, and that is it. You have added a unit from within a mod to another faction, and you have added a unit from another mod into a mod you want to play. That is all there is to it. You've then made it trainable and recruitable on the campaign map, and then you can fiddle around with the stats as per one of the previous modding tutorials on unit stats, or you can fiddle around with the building stats as per, again, the building stats. So that's adding units. I do hope you've learned something from this. I hope it's been useful. If you have any feedback or comments, please do leave them in the description below. Otherwise, until we speak again, Navair Naden Pedamad Melonin, and farewell.